How's it going, YouTube? It's your boy Ron, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Play Pikmin 2. In our first episode, we had returned back to the planet that we had originally crash landed in. That was a whole predicament. We are now back for an actual purposeful reason, and that is to collect as much treasure as we can, because we have to get rid of the debt somehow that the president somehow managed to get us involved in. And of course, like always, it is our job to go ahead and save the day and collect as much as we can so we can go ahead and just pay off the debt. So now that we are back at the Valley of Repose, unlike the tutorial day, which pretty much just taught us what we're supposed to do, this is actually where we start to get in some of the gameplay. But the ship warns us and stuff. And you can actually see some stuff in the background, but a lot of that we'll take care of later. Good morning, workers, ready for another day of toiling for the profit for your company. The Pikmin seem to still be asleep in their onion. What lazy creatures. No wonder they lack survival skills. Stand beneath the onion and press A to call them out. And they're not being lazy. They pretty much do all the work for us. I mean, did they not see what they did for Olimar? I mean, all Olimar did was point. Anybody can point. Any dummy can point. It takes a real skillful person to actually do it. Okay, but enough of that. This is contemplating. Our job right now is to go ahead and just collect some more Pikmin. There's nothing up there for us. Okay, so pretty much like in the original game, and from every day sequentially after the first, we will see a time limit. So of course the day meter on the top will represent the amount of time that we have left on this specific day before it becomes nighttime and a lot of the nocturnal creatures are awakened and everyone starts roaming and is very dangerous for Pikmin. Something that we've already seen before. So now we can actually take care of this bag. As we see, there's 35 Pikmin. We were nowhere near that number in our first day. And something you can already kind of see are some familiar faces as well. So of course we see the Dwarf Bulborb and then the Red Bulborb. They're going to be familiar enemies that we saw back when we were in this planet originally in the original game. And not much has changed about them. There are a lot more new enemies here though. I mean, if you look at the enemy list from Pikmin 1 to this one, oof, there are a lot more. Some did get removed, some were of course added, and some of them have a different spin on them now. Very few have different changes to them in this game, but of course I'll explain that when we get to that point, since there's still going to be a couple while away before we even get anywhere near that point. But now with Louie, he can actually help us in hooking out Pikmin, so it is going to be a bit more efficient in at least gathering more Pikmin as we sprout them. Since we have 36, wait, I ripped up the rest of it. We can at least knock the gate down. There isn't too much to do with Red Pikmin right now in terms of exploring the whole area of the Valley of Repose. In order to fully explore this area, we're still going to be needing a lot more than just Red Pikmin. But I'll explain that as we go along. We already seen blue and yellow ones originally. There are some new Pikmin types to discover. I will of course elaborate more on that when we get to it. But we should be approaching one pretty soon. And you probably saw in the distance there is a treasure over there. I'll be honest though, pretty much the next day after the Valley of Repose, there isn't too much to do over here. No enemies really spawn over here, and there really isn't anything other than Louie's body silhouette from when he landed, and just more pellet pussies. But nothing too out of the ordinary for us. Really don't need this many Pikmin, honestly. Me too. Alright, I'll let them carry that. As long as we can get our Pikmin numbers up, that's fine. I would say the Pikmin distribution for 2 is going to be a little bit more spread out. In Pikmin 1, the red ones were really the more valuable ones, per se, just because they had slightly better offensive abilities, and they were just more useful. Yellows were really not that useful because they were just slightly lighter, so you can throw them above, but that was only for certain ship parts. And blues were going to be the next mildly useful just for water terrain, but other than that, that was about it. Reds were pretty much the preferred Pikmin in the original for majority of the time you were there. Same principle does kind of apply here, but those who are familiar with this game will know that there is one Pikmin type that is going to be vastly superior and is pretty much the preferred Pikmin in almost every situation, with the exceptions of like hazards and certain mobility issues. When we get to those specific parts throughout our exploration here, we'll take note of that. But for right now, we'll just leave that Pikmin species aside for just right now. I do want to get my numbers up. I still like to get my Pikmin numbers pretty high just to have some spare. fair numbers. I did lose a decent amount of Pikmin in our original Let's Play in the first game. That was because Pikmin, you could lose Pikmin in that game very easily. I've already touched up on that subject a good amount when we played it. Losing Pikmin in this one is a little bit more difficult. I will say a lot of the mechanics have bettered the user a lot more. In terms of like just traveling and also battling, because battling has been a lot better. The ideal strat was to charge with the C-stick. In this one, that doesn't really work this Pikmin all that well. You can still do it, but you don't be surprised if you lose a lot when you do that. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and gather up the remains. We already defeated the Bulborb. Not that big of a deal. He honestly is like the worst, one of the worst Bulborbs to go up against. Or easiest, I should say. I'm just gonna go ahead and knock down the gate. We can get to it. And there's one significant piece of land, I don't know what is a better word to say, and that's a little bit past the gate, and that is what appears to be a manhole. Pikmin 2 introduced one mechanic that is, of course, makes this game unique, and that is that manhole. Once we knock down this gate, I will go ahead and explain that in greater detail. I'm just going to go ahead and take Olimar over there so that way we can get some more of the Pikmin. I don't know what. How did he get stuck? Okay, never mind. I'm not going to bother. Alright, so this should take our Pikmin numbers up pretty significantly. We should have about like 70. Okay, so a little under 70. Oh no, exactly 70. Okay, so my first number was correct. I honestly don't remember. I played, like I said in the first episode, I played this game a lot of times more than the original, but the last time I fully completed this game was maybe 5 years ago. Of course, I'm just guessing, but it has been quite a while, and I won't lie, that the last time I played this was the last time I fully completed it. I played this game when it did originally come out, like in the early parts of 2000, the early 2000s. I think it was like 2006 when this game came out. And I'm not, like, no lie, I was horrible at Pikmin 2. Just like in Pikmin 1, I was pretty bad at Pikmin 2. I did lose a decent amount of Pikmin, and I also didn't really know how to do a lot of the strats, so I gave up on a lot of things. But I'll explain a lot more of that when we get to the significant parts, because there are some pretty hilarious stories. But for now, how could Pikmin destroy such a massive wall when Master Might is ferocious? Louie, did Olimar instruct you on proper Pikmin commanding protocol? Apparently not. Olimar, you are failing in your duty as a superior. Allow me to explain. Press A to grab Pikmin and release to throw them. Call them into group with B. Press X to disband group and use C-stick to issue orders and objectives to the group. C is useful for swarming Pikmin around treasures and enemies or making them march in a line. That is true. The C-stick is a bit more, I guess, calibrated in this game. It is a lot easier to maneuver in this way. I just like it. They did fix a lot of the issues with one, but I'll explain that a little bit later because this is the manhole I was talking about. If you approach it. Interesting. Warm air is welling up from the hole in the ground before you. What could lie underground? What is wrong? You both show expressions of unease. Do not fear. The leader's group of Pikmin will join you. I shall too dispatch my research pod too. Approach the hole and press A to jump in. Alright, so if we instruct what the, I guess our research pod told us, and as you can see, there's a lot of enemies over there, some familiar, and some that are very new to us, but we can't go over there yet because there's water, and if we had already known, Red Pikmin don't like water. We already know that from the original game. But if we do go ahead and interact with the pothole, we see the Emergence Cave. So a little bit about this UI and a little bit about the cave. So this is the Emergence Cave, and the 4 silhouettes above signify how many hazards and dangers there are. They are blacked out, meaning there is none of those, so we don't have to worry about them for now. It'll be more significant later as we approach more tedious holes. I know, bad choice of words. Below is the amount of treasures that are, I believe if I'm correct, is the amount of treasures that you've collected from there. That'll be a bit more specific as we collect one other treasure that we still don't have access to for quite a while. And of course, Pikmin entering is just the amount of Pikmin that you have on the field versus the amount entering with you. It pretty much never goes without saying that you pretty much want to enter with all the Pikmin you can. It is very rare that you will ever enter with less than 100. There is only one cave in this game that you would probably want to enter with less than 100, And for those who have played this game pretty well or know about this game, will know which cave I'm talking about, and it's one of our infamous ones that we will get to eventually. But for now, what we are going to focus on is the Emergence Cave. It is the first dungeon that we are going to be dealing with in Pikmin 2. And of course, with many firsts in any game, it typically tends to be the tutorial or the easiest. So let's go ahead and enter with all of our Pikmin. Alright, and like I mentioned, Pikmin 2 has introduced one thing that the original did not have, and that is caves or dungeons. These caves hold many treasures and many enemies and a lot of new significant things to the second game. Pretty much how they work is they do not interfere with the time of day. So as you saw, we were pretty much near halfway done throughout our first day. So once you enter a dungeon, that pretty much stops. But of course the pod's gonna tell us some of these things. Intriguing. My heat sensors indicate that this hole's interior is warmer than on the surface. Analysis suggests subterranean areas may support different life forms than the surface. If you wish to check underground terrain, press start pause to communicate with me. I am not just a ship, I am an all-purpose support pod. Pretty much, yeah. Or intelligent one. So like I was saying, when you enter dungeons, they don't interfere with the time above, so you're pretty much free to spend as much time as you can here. As you see, the time limit is gone. Only thing that really tells us on the UI is that there is a sub-level and pretty much everything standard that you expect. I just don't want to lose Pikmin that early in the game. Like, that used to be so pathetic. Alright, but you do see some treasures. Every subfloor, with the exception of a few throughout the dungeons that we'll see throughout the Pikmin planet, will have treasures, but of course a lot of those will be obvious when we get some other treasures, and of course we'll know through other cues. Emergence Cave is really just a tutorial kit to get familiar yourself with caves. As you can see, it is pretty dark in here. So that is kind of to mimic a cave. It's supposed to limit your field of vision, although it is still pretty visible regardless of dim lighting. There is actually a treasure that can help out with us on that end, but I will explain a lot more of that later. Not going to worry about too much about it now. How can you possibly consider this beast a treasure? As beasts are incompatible with my circuitry, I suppose I will store your finds in my hold. But I do not think beasts will be worth much. Beasts are not going to be worth really anything. As soon as we get some treasures, we'll see that they are actually going to be, of course, pickable. And our first underground treasure, it is going to be in what looks like a mandarin orange, but is of course named from the research pod, the citrus lamp. Worth 180, so we are getting some Pokos slowly and surely. And of course, beasts aren't going to be worth anything. These beasts, the white dwarf bulborbs, or snowy dwarf bulborbs, are worth 2. And we see a 7-Up bottle cap worth 100 Pokos. A quenching emblem. I can see that quenches thirst, so it only makes sense to name it that. The pod does have some pretty clever names and some also grim names, but we'll see that throughout every time we collect treasure. Alright, listen for that. Okay. If you were able to hear that, that sound signifies that there are no more treasures left on this floor. I remember when I first played this, I didn't really get that idea from the start, so I was just kind of like, so there's no more, right? And obviously, since there's really only 2 rooms, and even if you pull up the map, it can kind of show you that. There's really not much here, and all the enemies are gone, so we collected literally everything we can from this. But as we approach the next manhole, we get to see this. This hole appears to be quite deep. The sensors indicate more treacherous terrain ahead. Louie, you do recall that you can adjust the camera with L, R, and Z, correct? I do. Your expression suggests you do. Excellent. Then approach to the hole and press A to enter it. Alright, so also with many caves that we'll see throughout, there is not just one floor. There can be as many as like 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20. Just depends. But of course, like I said, with this being the very first cave, there's not going to be that much. I believe, if memory serves me correct, this should be the final one. Yeah, this is the final one. Okay, so the Emergence Cave is our first dungeon, and it only has cave only has 2 sublevels. And of course, the final floor fanfare will play, letting you know that that's the case. Alright, so if one thing I do want to mention that we pull out the map, we do see the layout of the cave, just to give you an idea how much space and what you have to work with. I'll just explain a little bit of that later. But one thing I didn't really explain in detail that much yet is we did see a new enemy, and we saw it in the first floor, and that is the snowy dwarf bulborb. So they are just like the bulborbs, the red ones, but these are snowy ones. So they are really only limited to the cave. I keep saying dungeons, caves. So like our research pod had told us, there are some creatures that are only going to be lying within the depths of the caves, and these are one of them. You will never see these above ground. These are really going to be only bulborbs you will find in dungeons. I mean, caves. I'm going to be saying that, but it's caves. Okay, sorry. It's conceivable that conceivable. Can't read, can I? It's conceivable that such an immense object has been buried here for so long. The design on the outer shell resembles the surface of the planet as seen from space. Perhaps this can be used for something other than salvage. But how will we ever lift it? I fear that even 100 red Pikmin won't be unable to lift it. Oh, that is quite the predicament, because if we take a look, it takes 101 Pikmin to carry this. And if you guys recall, we can only have 100 Pikmin out on the field at once. So even if we did get 100 reds, how are we going to get the other ones? And one thing you guys probably already did notice as well is you can't really even grow Pikmin here. So it pretty much goes without saying, the Pikmin you're coming in here is pretty much the same number you should be leading out. It's obvious that you can lose more. There are a few exceptions where you can get more, but I'll explain that later since we can't really get anywhere near that right now. It's going to defeat a lot more of the snowy dwarf bulborbs, but if we head up here, we'll see something that we've never seen before. Astounding. A flower blooms in a cave deep beneath the snowy landscape? Clearly it's warmer down here than above. Look, the Pikmin are restless. They look as if they yearn to be tossed into the flower. Alright. Well, if they want to, we'll go ahead. So these are going to be, I forget what these are called. They're candy pop buds, but I forget what the actual names of these are. I want to say purple just for simplicity's sake, but I don't know what the actual name is called. We'll see that later in the Piklopedia. But if we look down, we notice that these are a purple color, kind of resembling the purple flower, obviously. But it doesn't seem to be a Pikmin color that we were used to back when we first came here. Let's go ahead and pluck it and see what we're introduced to. Ooh, oh my. Amazing! A purple Pikmin. It has hair and is quite stocky. It seems very heavy and strong. This kind of Pikmin was not mentioned in your report, Olimar. It must be an entirely new type. Transforming Pikmin by tossing them into flowers? Intriguing. Perhaps there are others. And that is true. The newest Pikmin type introduced into the second installment is the purple Pikmin. And of course, as the research pod had told us, it is a stocky and big figure. It is heavy. These Pikmin are of course considered to be one of the best Pikmin types in the game. And Pikmin 2, and of course its later succeeded game, show that it is a valuable Pikmin type. These Pikmin are incredibly strong. Like, you can throw these onto enemies and they are instantly knocked out. Certain ones, and they are very useful in battle. But of course, for being a stocky figure, like the ship said, they are one of the slowest in terms of running. They are very slow. They can barely keep up. But one thing that they do have the benefit over, and of course in helping us with this massive treasure, is that 10 of them can go ahead and lift this, and then we only need one left. So of course, if you can do the math, that means one purple Pikmin is the equivalent of having 10 Pikmin. So their strength is massively superior. I will be honest, throughout our journey, throughout the planet, we will be using purple Pikmin a lot. They are considered to be a little bit overpowering in this game just because a lot of enemies just can't handle the purple Pikmin. Of course, it does help in kind of balancing it out that they are a little slow, so in terms of running away, it is a little bit hard, but these are a Pikmin type that we will see a lot throughout our journey here. I'm just going to go ahead and collect the rest of the few remaining treasures. It is going to take quite a while to get that final part up. This is going to be considered treasure as well. It's stuck. It was moving very slow to the point where I thought it was stuck. Leave it there. And then as Olimar, I'm just going to make my way over. But as we are finishing up, I will go ahead and elaborate a little bit more in terms of just finishing up. No, I keep saying dungeons again. Caves. gonna get over to this part right here. I'll just wait for the Pikmin. And there we go. And a better fanfare. Worth 200 Pokos, it is the Spherical Atlas. So there is a device resembling a microchip embedded inside the sphere. Retrieving data. Error. I can only decode a portion of the data, but I did retrieve new geographic charts. I will input this data into my planetary database and name it the Sphere Chart. Alright, and press start, contact me, and access the Explorer Kit on the radar screen with L. Now that we have this new data, you should explore the decoded territory tomorrow. Alright, perfect. So, in the original Pikmin game, gathering enough parts to increase our ship's capabilities was one way of being able to explore new land, and certain treasures that do have information for us to explore new areas will be one way that we can find out about new locations. Alright, now that we have all the Pikmin, we can go ahead and just head up. And we see this geyser, so of course it isn't like the manhole that we saw earlier. The geyser does something a little different. Astounded! Water is shooting out of this geyser with incredible force. Sensors indicate it is enough power to launch you into the air. Approach it and press A to try. Yeah, as you can see, it does show us a pretty spiking image of the outer surface. So one thing I will say is you do not have to have your Pikmin in command to leave with you as long as they're all in the field. You can go ahead and escape with all of them, so you don't have to worry about saying if you're leaving one behind, they will all go with you regardless. Alright, and that is Emergence Cave done. And of course, kind of like the end of the day screen, the treasure salvage screen will kind of give you an idea of what you collected, and will of course tell you if the cave is complete, signaling the red flag above. So there we've gotten all 3 treasures we can, so of course all 3 will display the names, the pictures, and of course the quantity that they cost, and even the enemies' remains. Showing you, of course, the total that you collected from that, and so far that you have throughout your adventure. And of course, the Pikmin Ghost silhouette indicates how many Pikmin you lost in that cave. Luckily, we didn't lose any. They're not that bad. Alright, the Emergence Cave. So one of the caves is done in the Valley of Repose. And once you do head back to the surface, you don't have to worry about like the day being ending or like all it being done. You have successfully returned to the planet's surface. Excellent decision making, gentlemen. We must celebrate your first successful spelunking expedition. You have gathered a large amount of data that needs in-depth analysis. I shall send a report back to the President tonight detailing your progress. Okay, and let's see what he says now. Alright, Olimar and Louie, since you will explore a new area tomorrow, today's work is done. What? You still want to work? Unacceptable. You may not realize it, but you are exhausted. You take a much needed rest, as you have all the time you need to collect treasure. Haste makes waste, so take it slow and steady. Alright, so pretty much after the Emergence Cave, you are pretty much done. It's pretty much the ship's way of telling you that's it. He also did explain that there is no time limit. So of course in the original game you had 30 days of oxygen, meaning you had 30 days of total time to of course complete the game. Here you have unlimited days, so of course we're not restricted to like life's oxygen or like dying. You have as much days as you want to complete the game to collect all the treasures you can. I don't know what the world record is, honestly. I have to look it up, but it's really pretty short. I think it's only like 9 or so days, I believe, if I remember correctly. We really don't need that many days to complete this game. We're not, of course, aiming for a world record. We're just aiming for completion. I know, I'm just that kind of person. So, of course, we get a summary of what we collected, and, of course, our Pikmin total. We have increased our numbers for red and purple, meaning we haven't lost any yet. So far, so good. Alright, and we ended off there with the last thing being mail that we get from the from the president again. Baby steps first, Olimar. Plan well, and don't worry about me. Our debt is Happy Hope rotates savings and loan, after all. Besides, there's nothing left to repossess. So ha! Yes, they took in everything. What more? Those grimy bastards, they can't do anything else. They stole everything. Alright. And with some slightly more cheery fanfare music, we are given the ability to explore a new area, the Awakening Wood. After we had collected that sphere, it did give us the ability to, of course, travel to a new location. There isn't much we can do at the Valley of Repose with just purple Pikmin alone. Yes, they are heavier and have a lot more greater battle potential, but they still don't have the abilities that other Pikmin possess so that we can explore new areas. So we are going to have to leave the Valley of Repose for now, because the next episode, guys, we will go ahead and start tackling on the Awakening Wood. So guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. Do hope you enjoyed. Just to kind of recap it here, I will try to explain how the days will work out. So I didn't expect this episode to be as long as it is. This won't be the same criteria that'll go from day 3 onwards. If we spend enough time out on the surface and we reach a new cave, I will try to break up the episodes enough to where we kind of hit it off at the 20-minute mark. That's kind of the sweet spot I want to put it in. But since the Emergence Cave was a pretty small cave in its own self, I figured just making it one whole episode wouldn't be that bad. But the time is getting away from me. But I do want to just let you guys know that I am trying to break up the time, so that way we spend a good amount of even time and enough cave exploration for, you know, every cave that we'll be exploring. Because as you can see, there is quite enough to do here at the Awakening Wood, and a little bit more still to do at the Valley of Repose when we get more Pikmin. But we'll explore a lot more of that in the next episode. So guys, this has been your boy Ron, and until next time, I'll see you guys back here at the Awakening Wood, so we can go ahead and begin another exploration at a new place and see if we can gather more treasure, maybe even some more new Pikmin. I will see you guys then. Take care.